minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Oh, yeah. That's right. It's time. It is time. You get the Horn Show. If you are new to our show, congratulations. You found us. And you won't regret it. If you are returning to our show, welcome back. We are happy to have you. The Army grows every day, and momentum continues to build. And we are happy to have all of you be a part of it. So tonight we're going to do things a little bit different. Tad and Jeff here. We're going to go through it. And normally we talk about all the craziness of the week and news stories and, you know, whatever thing. We kind of put our spin on it. But we're going to do something just a little bit different for this week's episode, because the biggest news that we had more recently had to do with the NFL draft. That's right. So here's the deal. The NFL draft just happened. And if you're listening to this and you think, I don't care about the NFL, I'm not a football fan, it doesn't matter to me about the NFL, I don't want to hear about it, I hate it, just give us a chance to do what we do. All right, hear us out, because we're not gonna. This is a post-draft show, a draft review show, but we're doing it our style, our version of that. We're not draft experts. We're not going to be going through pick by pick and analyzing who did what and all that type of stuff. We're going to talk about it in the way that we talk about things, which is kind of finding some of the more interesting points of it, some things that maybe other people aren't reporting on, some humorous stuff. And, it'll be worth your time. I promise. Money back guarantee if it's not.
Absolutely. 100% money back guarantee.
Yeah, we stand behind it. We stand behind our work. But let's get into it. So the NFL draft just ended. Teams are now off the clock, and we had a lot of interesting storylines with this. And I don't even know where we should start with it. I mean, we can start at the top of the draft, I suppose. I don't know, Jeff, if you had anything you wanted to kind of start off with. I had a few ideas, because some of the storylines we thought we were going to have going into the draft changed very quickly once the draft got started.
Yeah, 100%. How about 43 trades over 3 days, which is an NFL record. 40
Incredible.
Trades set during the 2019 season. 43 trades, man. It was just left and right. We were texting pretty much through every trade.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. They just traded. They traded. Did you see I don't usually watch NFL, ESPN's version of it. I'm usually an NFL Network guy.
Me too.
But I happened to watch Saturday. My son actually had it on. We were hanging out with some friends, and it was just kind of on in the background. And they brought out a cake for old Mel Kiper Jr. It was
I saw this on Twitter or something. Yeah.
And it was his 40th. So it's 45th year, but it was his 40th year at ESPN doing it. And he was just talking about how, like, he had zero TV time ever before they threw him on that first draft. And he was with Chris Berman, and he's like, where do I look? What camera am I at? What am I doing? And Berman was just pretty much like, look, you're just looking at me. You're just talking to me. And, and I was just thinking,
Papa Bear Berman just guiding him through it.
I got you. But it was just like, where would the NFL draft be without Mel Kiper Jr.?
It's funny.
Yeah, because we always are just kind of like dog him a little bit. And, of course, he's a Baltimore fan, and us Pittsburgh fans can't stand the dude because he's always got to put down the Steelers in the draft. It always feels like, anyways. He doesn't, but it's always.
I'm a huge Kuiper fan for that very reason.
But so Steeler fans always thinks he has a bias. He doesn't. He could care less. But I was like, man, where would the NFL draft be without Mel Kiper Jr.? I mean, you could pull up right now 2024 NFL mock drafts, and there's no less than 100 different sites that have mock drafts out
That's
already.
Right. Yes.
So, Yeah, I
Well,
don't
think
know,
about it.
man.
Even a
It's
guy like
awesome.
Todd McShay, right? Todd McShay,
yeah.
who is certainly a knowledgeable guy in and of himself, but he's molded an entire career based on what Mel Kiper was able
Yeah.
to create as a career. And, you know, Mel's a guy we got to have on the show sometime. I had to reach out to Mel because his story, I've read, you know, his background and stuff. And man, it's just fascinating. Like he just decided, I'm going to start being a draft expert. And he made like a newsletter and stuff and was
Yeah.
gathering information, sending it to the NFL teams and things. And like teams were, you know, at first kind of dismissive of him. Some listened to him more than others, but you know, it's nobody was doing this type of
Right.
thing and grading and evaluating and not for public consumption. Maybe the teams themselves were doing this stuff. But I mean, remember we talked a while back when we did a special on the history of the combine. And in the draft combine, they weren't even doing medical checks until like the early 70s or something. Like there was just no evaluation of players. So, you know, what Mel has done is really put the armchair football fan into a knowledgeable position to talk about strengths and weaknesses of players that, you know, I don't even watch that much college football. I'm always transparent about that. I don't watch much college football. But when it comes into the draft, I start catching myself up on who's good at what, who does what, who's going to be the right fit. And, you know, Kiper's the guy you're going to go to for a lot of that information.
Yeah.
Mel Kiper, you know, he's pretty trusted. He's not going to win them all. He's not right all the time.
I'm not sure.
No one is. No one is. It's guesswork. They live to find the ones that he's way off on. But the reality is, it's all total guesses. I mean, you know, Tom Brady's a 6th round pick. Other people, Ryan Leaf's a, you know, 1st round bust. I mean, you just have everything in between. You don't know. You just go off of your best evaluation of it. But he did create a whole industry, like a cottage industry around draft evaluation.
Yeah, now there's some other guy on ESPN. I don't know. I didn't stick around long enough to find out who he is, but he's like younger than Kiper, so he's on there
Generations
now.
keep coming
So
up.
it's just you know, and you know even or I'm sorry, McShay. He's younger than McShay. Even McShay is like saying, yeah, I got my start, you know, and Mel apparently is the super nicest guy. Like he went to bat for Kiper to get, or for McShay to get on the show, to get on ESPN. Like he vouched for him. Just crazy. Like how
who would do that? Who was going to introduce your own competition?
Your competition.
And say like, no, we should bring this guy on. He's really knowledgeable. It's like most people want to hoard that power to be able to say, I'm the expert on ESPN. I'm the only one they talk with. And for him to go out and, you know, stick his neck out for them to bring on a Todd McShay.
Yeah.
And it's not like McShay is a sycophant. He doesn't agree with everything that Kiper says. Quite the opposite. I mean, they go back and forth about these things, and he's all for it. So,
and that's kind of how McShay made his mark, was disagreeing with everything. And even through all that, like, you know, Kiper is still, you know, he's still one of his biggest fans. So Pro Football Talk had something that said the NFL draft had a total unduplicated audience of 54.4 million viewers over the course of the draft. So this has turned into just a you know, like a celebration, a spectacle. It's a must see, and it's crazy because you're just
those numbers are bigger than NBA playoff games. Those are bigger. I mean, those TV numbers are massive for a draft that many people watching have never heard the names of most of these players until days leading up to it. Because even if you're a fan, I don't care if you're a fan of, you know, Alabama or Tennessee, or you're just a big college football fan, you don't know every player at every position at every school and know how they rank and where they should go. Yeah. Most of these guys you haven't heard of. And then, you know, you find out leading up to the draft. It's crazy.
Yeah. Even my wife was like watching and like getting into it. Like, okay, well, is he good? Is he good? I don't know. You know,
I never seen him before.
You know, like, you know, Steelers picks. Was that a good pick for the Steelers? Like, yeah, it was a great pick. Yeah. Future Hall of Famer.
One of their best ever. Every team before him could have gotten him, but they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. Big mistake. So.
No, I mean the draft itself, and now you know, really over the last few years, you've also seen that evolution where, man, now it's the red carpet ahead of time, and it's the fashion, and it's everything that's leading up to this. I mean, it is an event, not just for the players, but it really is a TV event. The pre-shows, the post-shows, the red carpets, everything. I mean, it's and this is what the NFL does better than every other sport by a wide margin is that every single thing that happens in the season, they make into an event. I don't care if it's the combine, if it's the draft, if it's the preseason and training camp starting. Obviously Hard Knocks was, is still a popular show, but certainly was for its time so revolutionary to be following a team all through training camp. Every single thing that happens, not to mention all the postseason stuff. So the NFL's by far leaps and bounds better than every other sport as it pertains to just creating that momentum and that feeling of this is an event you don't want to miss, even if it's something you wouldn't ordinarily care about.
Yeah. No, I mean, any show that can keep me up past 10 o'clock at night is doing something good. So
that's right. Well, let's get to the draft here a little bit. So let's talk about it. I mean, there was a lot of talk about, who was going to be the number one overall pick. And let's face it, this is the conversation every single year before the draft. Yep. And the NFL loves the fact that that's the conversation, because what does it do? It keeps people paying attention to at least find out who the first pick's going to be. And, you didn't know this year looked like it was going to be a quarterback, of course, but is it going to be a Bryce Young, a CJ Stroud, an Anthony Richardson, a Will Levis? You just didn't know leading up to it. And we had actually featured Bryce Young on this show a few times, talking about, the issue of height, historic, perspective of that height and whether or not that would be effective and whether teams would be scared off. And clearly they weren't, so Bryce Young goes number one overall to the Carolina Panthers. And, it honestly, for me personally, and I know this isn't everything, but the more and more you see and hear Bryce Young and you hear him speak and how he handles himself, it kind of starts to feel like a good pick. He seems like a kid who's pretty solid, pretty grounded, really just, seems like a sharp guy. And so they may, that height, we're going to have to see how he plays. But, in general, they might have gotten a good one there.
Yeah, and we talked about it. Panthers were 7-9 last year. So, and that was with nobody a quarterback.
That's right.
So, that's a team we say, hey, that's a quarterback away. Yeah, if they have great play, from Young, I could be easily be a playoff team this coming year. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, there's a big if with him. I mean, if he's 6'1", 6'2", I don't think there's any, worries about that. I think we're just
right.
It's just the fact that the dude is shorter than Roger Goodell. So I don't.
Yeah. Could be a concern, but look, we've talked about it before. I mean, he didn't wake up short. He's been that height. He knows how to play. It is different in the NFL, but I will say, if you're drafting someone to the NFL, the closest thing there is to an NFL program is Alabama. And so if you're going to bring a guy in and you want the closest and the most similar kind of thing for him to transition from and to have the lowest barrier of entry, is to take him from Alabama. There are some seasons that Alabama could probably be competitive with NFL teams. So they have a loaded talent, and most of his offensive linemen will end up playing in the NFL if they weren't already drafted. Right. So he's been behind guys that are NFL size. This isn't a guy coming from a junior college, playing behind linemen or dealing with receivers that, will never be quality players. This is a guy who's played in an almost professional level program. And so sure. I do think that is a little bit more predictable for how he might transition.
Yeah, for sure. I was, so I don't think there was any doubt number one was going to be Bryce Young. But man, when we got to number two, I legit had no idea what the Texans were going to do. And then they did what I didn't think they would do, and then turned around and traded back up to do what I thought they would do at pick number two. So the Texans take CJ Stroud at number two. There was a lot of speculation that they weren't going to take a quarterback this year. I was kind of in that camp that I didn't think they needed to take a quarterback this year.
Yeah.
Because DeMeco Ryans was going to have minimally 4 years to turn the program around. everyone knew how bad the Texans were. They didn't bring him in to be, a 1 year, guy. He's
Right.
going to have time to build that program up. So I was like, man, okay, build your defense up. Your offense maybe struggles. Maybe you get lucky, get that number 1 pick next year. Now you're taking a guy like Caleb Williams, who many project to be head and shoulders above this draft class. They didn't, man. They went with C.J. Stroud. So, and that was a guy that had a lot of questions coming. After that score came out, that he apparently just didn't show up for.
Yeah.
He got credit to put his name on it. Outside of that, doesn't sound like he did good at all. And he was like, "Look, I'm not a good test taker. I play football. I don't know." But then there's those stats that say the guys that perform the best on these are the best quarterbacks. And Brock Purdy was like one of those last year who finished, probably aced it, and looks like he could
be the real deal.
The real deal. So I don't know. I was a little surprised with CJ at number 2. Did you?
It was interesting because I thought the same thing. Like you started hearing all that stuff about the score, and it's become very obvious. They get rid of the Wonderlic, and it's all about, well, it's unfair to players. The scores get leaked, all this kind of stuff. And then what you do is you turn right around and you just put out a different test called the S2 cognitive test instead of the Wonderlic test that also has a score that also immediately gets leaked. And then players are also instantly shamed for how the scores go. Yeah. It's insane to me how the NFL, if they really don't want these scores to get leaked, how they always seem to manage to get leaked. And the NFL never makes an example out of anyone. There's never been a time where the NFL has come out and said, we found the person who's been leaking these test scores and they've been terminated immediately.
Right.
There's no example made of anybody. It's just like, well, I don't know. That's what happens. And it's just because the NFL doesn't care. They're just shoveling coal onto that fire, man. They want people more and more interested. And, and leaked test scores damaging a player's reputation only creates that much more interest and hype around the draft and understanding, okay, where's this guy going to go? What's going to happen? Yeah. And I don't know if you saw Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, talked a little bit about this because he was furious after the draft. And the Colts didn't draft CJ Stroud. They drafted Anthony Richardson. And in a press conference, Chris Ballard was saying, I'm going to edit his words because he was animated, but he said, essentially, this is complete BS that you have players taking these tests and then getting humiliated and, all this stuff. And he said straight up, like, this isn't about Anthony. Like this isn't even about him. This is about another player, which obviously we all know who that player is. Yeah. But he's saying, like, these are kids and they have everything in the world happening to them all at once with this pressure and no sleep, and they're traveling all over the place. And then they also have to take this test that has a lot of attention and emphasis put on it. And then if they don't do well, then the results end up getting leaked. And then people start telling, everyone was laughing about how CJ Stroud must be a dummy. And it's just like, come on, man, you went to Ohio State and, you're doing all this stuff. It's like, okay, I get it. You're a football player. You're probably not having to go through, the quite the level of courses that, that your average student may, but still, man, you can't just be totally mentally deficient and memorize playbooks and everything else. At the end of the day, regardless of scores, these teams interview these people and they spend a lot of time with them, and they clearly felt comfortable with the investment they were making. Honestly, who the heck knows? Maybe the Texans are the ones that leaked the stuff about CJ Stroud to keep other teams away from him. For them to be able to go, you can't trust anybody this time of year.
No, and there would be no reason for anyone to leak it except for to try and make his draft stock go down.
That's right.
What other reason would there be besides to make him fall down to you? So, we'll see. Again, I'm not a GM, but I would have taken Will Anderson at 2. They end up trading back up and take Will Anderson at 3, and I would have just set my sights on building that defense up and next year going after the quarterback. But hey, man, good. I hope CJ, they saw something in him. I just don't trust any Ohio State quarterback. I just
agreed. There's no track record.
The track record is there that they just don't perform. Yeah.
Sooner
So
or later, someone will, right? Sooner or later, someone's going to
Sure.
be good, but it sure doesn't happen.
Sure.
And, the other thing that I thought was interesting before we move on is just that I just, at the time, we were talking about it when it happened, but even thinking about it afterwards, I can't recall very many times that a team has been so aggressive to make the number 2 pick and then trade back up to get the number 3 overall pick. I mean, it's one thing if you trade back up to get into the first round.
Yep.
We're talking about to trade back up to get to the number 3 pick, which is just, I don't know. That's you had to give up a lot, but they really went after it.
So they did, but then they have, they had to give up a first next year, but they had 2 firsts. Right. So they just, they saw it and saw an opportunity, and they had the most draft picks. You knew they weren't going to draft 12 players. And, next year we knew they weren't going to draft 11 players. You're just not going to do that. So we knew there was going to be an opportunity, but you're right, to jump all the way back up to 3. We were like, what in the world?
Yeah.
But then, you get your quarterback, and then you get, potentially the best defensive player in the draft. I mean, I don't know. You have DeMeco Ryans, training this guy up. What better place for Will Anderson to go to than the Texans with DeMeco Ryans, who, most people probably don't know how great of a football player DeMeco Ryans was.
He was a good one, man. He was a good one for Houston for a long time.
For a long time. So very, very awesome. And then we get to the number 4 pick. And this is, I think, where everyone just this blew my mind. Anthony Richardson from Florida goes number 4 to the Colts.
They're either going to be really right or really wrong.
I don't. Can you see a situation where there's an in between? I don't.
I can't see it. It's either a train wreck or it's perfect. And honestly, the reason for that is just because most of the thing about him is the athleticism. So it's either that transfers over or it does not. That either translates into the NFL game, and then Anthony Richardson's a star, or it doesn't translate to the NFL game, and then that was a wasted pick. There's just not an in-between the way I see it.
I don't either. Now, I could see him. His game reminds me of Cam Newton. Just the athleticism, the arm strength. But remember, Cam Newton couldn't, half the time, hit the broadside of a barn. But he did win an MVP, and he did go to a Super Bowl. So would you, but then after that, Cam Newton's career was largely uninspiring, really. I mean, the first 3 years of his career was amazing. And then, injuries started happening, things started happening. And I would say after that, very uninspiring the rest of his career. So is that maybe an average, I don't know. So maybe there is the chance for it to be an in-between. Would the Colts be upset if he had the same career path as Cam Newton?
Look, if you get a Super Bowl out of it, even just one, I don't think you regret it. I think you'd give up a number 1 pick to get a Super Bowl.
What if you get to the Super Bowl? Like didn't win it.
That's right. That's the hard part. What you're asking is there any chance that the Colts get to the Super Bowl and Anthony Richardson fumbles a snap and won't jump onto the ball himself because he doesn't want to get stepped on?
He doesn't want to get hurt because he's got a contract coming up.
That's right. Could happen. That could happen, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you take a guy that's electric for 4 years and gets to a Super Bowl, even if you don't win it? Oh, man. It's
tough because. Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Richardson legit barely completed half of his passes in college. And it's just one of those, we talk about like the, as Mike Florio loves to call them, the underwear Olympics, and people get enamored by people in shorts and T-shirts when no one's running at them, when there's no defensive schemes coming at them, when they don't have to pick up a blitz or they don't have to look at an audible change. People get enamored by that, and I get it. I mean, the dude is a freak of nature. I mean,
Crazy.
his arm strength is ridiculous. But you remember Kyle Bowler, once
That's right.
threw a football 65 yards on his knees into a bucket.
Yep.
Whatever the story was.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily translate once you put on the pads and people are running at you. You're not going to be throwing from your knees or throwing standing still very often. So
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to he's got talent around him, so that is a great thing for him. So, man,
it's a boomer bust pick, but
It
I do think
is.
a big part of it for the Colts is just, if you look at last year and even the year before, they have been haunted by quarterback play.
Yeah.
So I do think for them, part of it is just, look, we have a decent team. We've got the running back in Jonathan Taylor. We've got weapons. None of it matters if we can't get this quarterback. So if we draft this quarterback and he doesn't work out, if Anthony Richardson doesn't work out for the Colts, I think they're looking at it going, well, then we're right back in this position with a high draft pick anyway, because we've seen that happen for the last couple of years. So I'd rather swing for the fences and miss, even if there's a chance of making contact. I got to take that versus just continuing to try to stack defensive players or something else. That, I mean, what are you going to do at number 4 now? Now the question is Anthony Richardson the right pick at that point versus a Will Levis? Turns out every team in the league would have had multiple chances to grab Will Levis if they probably really wanted to. But before we move on to Will Levis, I did want to talk about this because it's something that we discussed a while back on this show about how the running back position could start to be valued differently. Months ago, one of the things that we talked about on this show was, could running backs become the next quarterback, where you want to get these players on rookie deals to not have to pay them? And at the time, everybody commenting on our YouTube videos and everything else basically told us we're idiots, that, running backs are very replaceable and nobody wants to spend money on running backs. You just do a running back by committee, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this year there were 2 running backs drafted in the top 12 overall picks. We have Bijan Robinson, went at number 8. And honestly, I mean, many draft experts say he could be the best overall player in the whole draft. And he went number 8. And then Jahmyr Gibbs going 4 picks after that at number 12 to the Lions. A lot of people thought that was a bit of a reach, but the thing that we look at there, it's the first time that we had 2 running backs drafted that early since 2017. So it's been a while that we've seen 2 running backs drafted this high. And it does make you wonder if maybe teams aren't just looking at this running back role as being a dime a dozen and, replaceable, because if you're investing that type of draft capital, you clearly plan on seeing some great results out of that player.
Yeah. I don't understand. I get why these 2 were selected. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is, he could potentially be, Alvin Kamara type of player. Bijan, again, he might be, a LaDainian Tomlinson type player. There's been, that's been comps, or a better Saquon Barkley. I don't understand why either the Falcons took Bijan at 8, and I really don't understand why the Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs at 12. The Lions were first in just about every rushing category last year on a rookie contract with Tyler Algier, and they move up or they'll move up, but they take Bijan at 8 when you've got Jalen Carter sitting there. You've got offensive tackles that you could be going after. You've been trying to get that. You've been trying to get the edge forever. You got Will McDonald still on the board at that point. There's just it just felt like a luxury pick that the Falcons didn't have the luxury to take. So I get and I guess that's where we go. And I guess that's what I would ask you. Best available or draft for need?
So I'm a little influenced on this only because, as we know on the show, I'm a Ravens fan. You're a Steelers fan. The Ravens have always preached that you draft, or at least that they draft the best available player. Doesn't matter what positions of need are. It doesn't matter. You draft the best player on your board. That's how you get better. I think from everything that I've heard is that Arthur Smith, the coach of the Falcons, when they worked out Bijan Robinson, he got super excited about all of the things that he could do with this type of a player in his offense. And, you know, and the reality is they're trying to kind of come from behind here, and they want to be explosive on offense, and they have the players to do it. I mean, a Desmond Ridder, a Kyle Pitts, you know, I mean, the wide receiver that they have there, his name escapes me right now. Is it Drake London that's there?
Drake London, yep.
Yeah. And then you have, you know, now you have Bijan Robinson. I mean, they will have a heck of an offense. I don't know what else they're going to have, but they're going to have a heck of an offense.
They're going to have an offense that scores 30 plus a game to keep up, because they're, again, not going to have the defense. But yeah, I get it. I kind of go back and forth on that. Yeah, it's just I guess it depends on how you would value a running back, say, over a defensive tackle or defensive end, you know, like,
right.
So to say best available, okay, so he's the best running back you have available. Is he the best overall? Well, I don't know. So I guess you can kind of get into different nuances. But it seems like they just had him ranked so high that he was there, and they're like, no, we're taking him. So, well,
look, if this guy, and we don't know this at all at this point, and certainly can't predict this, but if Bijan Robinson did turn into a LaDainian Tomlinson, no questions asked. No. You would have taken him at number 8 all day long. Yeah. There's no question. So there's a risk. But if it does work out the way they probably think it could, then it'll be a no-brainer pick. You know, we may look at this 5-6 years from now and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that they got him at number 8. You know, it's a risk though, particularly in that running back role when you are a team with so many needs. I agree with you.
Yeah. You know, how many Super Bowls has LaDainian won?
Right.
Right. I mean, so it's like, you're not like, sure, you have a superstar player, but do you have you don't care about having superstar players. You trust me, the GMs, if they could have a bunch of undrafted free agents and win a Super Bowl, they're going to do that. Right. So, man, I think you have to build the team based on, you know, I get the best available. I get that. I do. I just feel like the Falcons had so many other needs besides a running back, especially when they essentially led the league in all statistical rushing categories last year. So it wasn't a need, you know, it's like, how much better are you going to get at the running back position? But if he offers more in the passing game, if he offers more, you know, you could put both him and Algier out there at the same time. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff they can do, but yeah, they're better hope they can score 30 plus a game at this point. So,
yeah. Well, and then let's jump into, you know, a little bit further of the story of Will Levis. And I'm actually going to throw another one in here who didn't slide in the same way, but Hendon Hooker, Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker, also slid. Didn't know where these guys were going to go. In the beginning, though, it was definitely looking like, okay, all the quarterbacks are going to, you know, I mean, they went 1, 2, 4, you know, it was just like, okay, quarterbacks are going to go fast. Will Levis, there have been rumors that he might be the first overall pick in this draft.
Yeah.
And then you see him like, okay, well, he's passed the Colts at 4. Who else is going to need him? Okay, well, I don't see the Falcons taking him. I don't see. And you start to look at who are the teams that need a quarterback.
Yeah.
And there were a lot that didn't. And Will Levis just kept dropping off the board. It wasn't that they were taking other quarterbacks anymore. They were just valuing other positions. And Will Levis kept dropping and dropping and dropping. And the next thing you know, we're done in the first round, and he's not even picked in the first round.
Yeah.
And then it was going to be what happens in the second round. So needless to say, everybody, I think, pretty much knew that the Steelers, who were sitting at that pick, weren't going to turn around and be worried about, or I guess this was after them, right? The Steelers were 32 and then the Titans went to 33. So everyone knew, like, okay, the Steelers aren't going to be taking a quarterback here. And so then, you know, the Titans moved up to grab Will Levis with the 33 pick. So very, very early second round pick on Will Levis. But man, it's still way, way, way different than what we thought.
Oh.
And then Hendon Hooker goes all the way to the third round to the Detroit Lions, who that could be a great pickup for them. Really could.
I loved it. I loved it, and I love Hendon Hooker. I think if he's healthy, I really think he could be one of the top quarterbacks in this draft. I just do. I love everything about this guy's game, and that ACL was pretty much what made him drop. But
Yeah.
you thought maybe, and again, I think we talked about this, like teams looking to jump back into the first round.
Mhm.
And apparently, based on the information that I heard, that the Eagles and the Chiefs were getting calls,
Yeah.
but they did not want to jump off of those picks.
Yeah.
The Eagles, goodness gracious. I mean, you think they really had an amazing draft. They get Nolan Smith at 30, and then the Chiefs did not want to jump off of that. So you're right.
Yeah.
Once we kind of got past, once the Colts went, then you're like, you think maybe the Seahawks could have an interest there,
right?
The Cardinals.
We were texting about that in real time.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Geno's not your long-term answer, is he? So have this guy
Right.
here, even if he sits behind Geno for a year, but
yeah.
They jumped up. They took Jackson Smith and Jigba, like earlier than I thought. So yeah,
that's it. And then you've got you had the Raiders, which you're like, all right, probably not. And then you just kind of got down when you got to the Titans and then the Lions. You were kind of like, okay, maybe. But then the Lions grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs, who we just talked about, 2 running backs. They grabbed him, and then after that, man, based on everything else we saw, it was like maybe the Lions at 18 again, but they ended up taking a linebacker. One team I thought would be interesting there was the Bucks. They ended up, but I was like, I could see that maybe. But then after that, it was just, no, this guy's going to fall. And what a fall it is, man. Like last year, Sauce Gardner went number 4 overall. And Christian Watson went in the second round, pick 2. Do you know their difference was $33.45 million for Sauce, $9.24 million for Christian Watson, $24 million.
3 times as much.
The 4th overall pick gets a 4-year, fully guaranteed contract. About the only good news would be they can't use the 50-year option on him, and he can either hit the open market or get franchise tag in 2027. But I mean, this dude lost wealth from dropping out of that first round. I mean, severe wealth dropping out of that first round.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. What do you think about him not showing up night 2? Did you care?
I wouldn't care too much if I were a team. I don't think. I think it's tough. I think part of it is how you read the situation. You either read it that he's angry, he's pissed off, he's embarrassed that he didn't get picked, and he's I don't know, stomping his feet and doesn't want to be there. Or you look at it the other way, and it's just like, look, I'm here with my family, and this is an incredibly embarrassing time. And it's not embarrassing for me for 10 minutes. It's embarrassing for hours and hours and hours. And not only is it embarrassing for hours and hours and hours, but they're keeping cameras on me at all times. And the longer it goes, the more focus there is on me, not less. There's more and more focus. So look, if it were me, I'd like to think that I would have been there. I do think it's a little bit more of a stand-up move to show up, for that second day and just say, hey, I'm here. And I'm going to stick it out. A little bit more show of character, but I don't think it's a red flag either.
Yeah, I think I would rather see my quarterback of the possible future just sit there and take it, like own it, show up in your nicest suit. You sit there, you smile for the camera, and just like it is in the game, you're going to take the blame for the loss. You're going to give praise to your teammates for the win. I think it would have been cool. Again, he turns into a perennial Pro Bowler. No one's going to care that he didn't show up for day 2 of the draft. And it's kind of embarrassing, man. Like, is it not? Like, they trot, they bring these guys out. They're all just standing around, sitting around. Like, there's got to be someone that tells them, like, hey, yes, show up because you are definitely getting picked in the first round. Otherwise, you're not going to be there, right?
Remember, I sent you that video of Will Levis like a month or so ago. They're asking him about attending the draft, and he said, "Yeah, I want to be there if I'm sure I'm going to get picked. With a pretty high pick. Like, if it turns out I'm not going to get picked, then yeah, I'd rather not be there." Well, I mean, clearly his agent, somebody had to have a pretty good sense of like, okay, yeah, we're good. You're going to go. And it just didn't fall that way.
Yeah, I wonder who is in their ears saying like, yeah, there's a great chance you're going to be picked or whatever. And then, you like the toe injury thing showed up. Like what? When did this happen?
Yeah, suddenly, magically draft night, everyone has a concern about it. No one cared in the combine when everyone was reveling about how this guy was. Then when he already had the toe injury and he's doing all the combine drills and throwing and everyone's super impressed with his athleticism and his arm and everything else. And there's all the rumors that he might be the first overall pick. Nobody said, oh, but his toe, and then magically draft night, turns out everyone's concerned about his toe.
Yeah. It was like, so you're not going to pick a guy up because his toes hurt. It just didn't make any sense. I'm assuming that was probably his agent just getting that out there, like, hey, by the way, he's got a toe injury.
Right.
I mean, it had to be right. He had to be doing something to make some excuse. So, I don't know what else you got.
I guess the only thing I was going to talk about, and not so much about those guys specifically, but I feel like a couple stories here, but one of them is. Okay, the Eagles had a great draft. Maybe they had the best draft. I think there's a good argument to be made that they may have ended up with the best draft. The thing I don't fully understand is why Howie Roseman is getting so much credit for having a great draft. He just he was in the positions, right? It's not like, Howie Roseman pulled off 14 trades that day to be able to move up and grab this player. Like, you have your picks. Like they did get those 2 first picks, those picks in the first round, and they're great picks. But any team would have probably made those picks if they were sitting there in that exact same position. Like the players fell to them. Yeah. And so I don't know that it's great decision making or anything by Howie Roseman. He's not it's just you had the picks, the players were there, you took them. I mean, who wouldn't have done that? I do think the draft definitely broke their way. And,
I think so, more so. Yeah, I think you're right. I think more so broke their way than anything else. But I don't know. Do you give them credit for sitting still and not getting antsy and making moves? Like I don't know. I think you're right. It's a little weird to.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there were some great like the Steelers had a great draft.
I'm usually pretty. I was excited. About the draft. I tell you who the guy I was so excited about was our 3rd round pick 93, tight end Darnell Washington out of Georgia. This dude looks like a freaking offensive lineman who can catch and run. I was watching some sled drills that they did at the combine, and it was a tight end. I don't even know who it was. Like legit was barely moving the sled, and they show him and he just picks this thing up and just throws it down the field. I mean, just a freak of nature. So I was excited. I mean, traded up to get Broderick Jones, offensive tackle, which is great. And then we're sitting there at pick 32. A lot of teams wanted that pick, and apparently the Steelers were asking for a pretty hefty ransom to come off of that pick, and no teams were willing to do it. And something picked Joey Porter Jr. So that's a lot of pressure on Joey because I feel like there was probably maybe a late first in there, or there was a first maybe next year that could have been involved in that. I don't know, or at least maybe that's what they were asking for. But for them to stay still when they had a lot of offers coming their way tells you a lot about what they
they like those players.
So but yeah. No, it was
there were some teams that did really well, and there's some teams that again, you never know. You look at these players, you look at old drafts, and the players that, who had the draft grades that were through the roof, they end up, you never heard of them again, and half of them were drafted by the Raiders. So
Sure.
still, it's like, it just always happens that it's, you look every year and you can go off of the evaluations and the grades at the time of the draft. We'll find out, if we 2-3 seasons from now, we sit back and we review this draft, boy, I bet we'd be drafting it in a totally different order with totally different players and positions, man.
And that's exactly it, man. Like you look at all those guys, even in the first round, and you're like, I was thinking it was Pro Football Focus legit gave everyone an A or like a B grade.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, this can't be like, I guess like
Yeah.
based on where they fall or, whatever.
Right.
But I mean, you even just look at the 2020 draft. Chase Young was number 2.
And they're not, and now Washington's said that they're not even picking up his 5th-year option.
Not picking up his 5th-year option. I mean, Tua goes ahead of Justin Herbert. Derek Brown goes ahead of Jerry Jeudy. You got all these different players. Jerry Jeudy goes ahead of CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they just picked up Jerry Judy's 5th-year option, but here's another one. The Jags pick up Kalavon Chasen. Just announced they didn't pick his 5th-year option up.
Yeah.
And, Eagles, Howie Roseman, genius, takes Jalen Reagor over
right.
Justin Jefferson.
That's right. That's it, man. It's like you're a genius one day, you're an idiot the next, or vice versa in some cases. And I mean, there's been that video has been circling around for years now of the Vikings front office laughing their tails off. Seeing that the Eagles did not take Justin Jefferson and how happy they were to be able to grab him. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just 3 years ago. So, I mean,
Yep.
it's, you're right. Half of these guys probably aren't even going to be in the league anymore. And,
It's true.
It's crazy. Hey, what did you think about Deion Sanders chastising everyone for only picking up one HBCU player?
I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I'm not sure the answer. I kind of feel like he probably isn't wrong, but he also isn't there. So,
I said it too.
I mean, it's kind of like you jump to the other side and you're criticizing the people who aren't drafting them, but you were the one that was there putting a spotlight on them, and you left as soon as you got an opportunity. You left,
yeah,
and then you're sitting in the catbird seat saying that they should have been. We'll see, because it's all over. The news about how so many Colorado players are in the transfer portal. So we're going to find out exactly how many HBCU athletes that Deion Sanders believes in, because apparently they should be flowing right into Colorado based on the number of Colorado players that are leaving.
Yep.
So if he really believes in the HBCU players, then he'll be populating the Colorado team with them. So we'll see. I think it's a little. I think it's just we've talked about this before. It's a little bit of pandering, to that HBCU community.
I just don't remember when Deion became so annoying. I don't know, man. Everything he does is just for show. And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Maybe there are some, but like, name me the last perennial Pro Bowler from, the HBCU, because they're probably not there, because they probably would have been at Alabama. They probably would have been out of Georgia.
Even if they started there, they would have transferred.
Right. And that's exactly it. There were 259 picks this year. 206 of those picks were between 5 conferences. The SEC had 62 picks, the Big Ten 55, and you just kind of go down the list, right? I mean, it's like it's all the big time schools. It's Alabama has 10 players drafted, Georgia has 10 players drafted, Florida was 6. ACC had 32 picks. The Big 12 had 30 picks. Pac-12, 27 picks. And then you get into like the AAC with 10. But even in the AAC, they're probably beating any HBCU team, right? I mean, I would think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you have those elite conferences, why would teams like they're not just going to pick players from in a historic black university college? They're just not.
Well, no, and it's also that like those players, like look, I don't know, I don't claim to be an expert on HBCU schools, but I have to believe that most of those players, if they are good enough to play at a major college program, they will transfer to a major college program. If they don't do that, then they're probably not good enough. If they aren't good enough to play for a major college program, it's highly unlikely that they're good enough to play for an NFL program. It doesn't rule it out. And maybe there certainly probably are players, more players than one, that is worth drafting. But I just think there's maybe a little teeny tiny bit of hypocrisy when that's coming from Deion.
I felt it too. And then you see the comments and like, well, what, is he never supposed to leave? I'm like, no. I mean, not the way that this dude makes out like that this is the best programs in football.
Right.
If it really is, stay, build something, build a top 10 team, but you're not going to do that. You ran, you took the money, you went somewhere else, you went to a Power 5 school. You're just, come on.
Well, the thing is too, Deion Sanders did what most HBCU athletes would do. He was at an HBCU school. He had the opportunity to move to a bigger program. He got the offer and he left. Most HBCU athletes would be at the school, and then if they got an opportunity to go to a bigger program, they would also leave. Yeah. So it tells you Deion made the move. The players that are still there are still there. A lot of them could leave if they're good enough, and so
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, his son leaves. I mean, shouldn't it be, hey, stay behind, son? Make something out of this.
Right.
But no, he wanted his son to come with him because there was a better opportunity.
Yep. And there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
nothing wrong with that.
Nothing at all. There's nothing wrong with Deion Sanders leaving and going to Colorado. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
You can't say, oh, poor HBCU schools, and then leave and go.
Yeah. I remember what it was like to be there. Got the hell out of there as quick as I could.
Right. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, you left for a better opportunity, so you could be more high profile. So you could get more high profile players because you can't get them at these schools. There was that whole thing in 2020 where everybody was, getting on board and, everyone was going to be transferring to these HBCU schools. And you saw how quickly that didn't happen. So it was.
Ed Reed was going to be going to Bethune-Cookman, and then he pulled the plug on that before anything even happened. He took one tour of the campus and was like, "I'm gone."
Apparently, he never took a tour of the campus prior to agreeing to go there. But he's like, "That sounds fun. Like, what in the world did I get myself into?"
No thanks.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the last thing too that I had, at least on this topic, is our old buddy, what I'm going to say, friend of the show. We featured this guy, talked about him at a time that really no one was talking about him at all, and the story now has gone all over the place. Our old buddy Deuce Vaughn, running back Deuce Vaughn, got drafted in the 6th round. We talked about him because he was the shortest player in the draft and one of the shortest players ever, right, in the draft.
Yeah.
So and of course I don't have his stats in front of me. You may be able to bring him up. I don't remember his exact height, but he's like 5'5" or something like that. Definitely a short guy. You have it?
Hold on. Yeah, it's here.
We got drafted in the 6th round by the Cowboys, and his father, Chris Vaughn, is actually a scout for the Cowboys. So it was pretty cool that, they actually let him, Chris, the father, make the call to Deuce Vaughn, letting him know that he was going to be drafted. And It was
Very,
cool.
very cool moment. Yeah. 5'5",
Yeah.
$176 is
Yeah,
what
there you
we
go.
have him as. So
5'5", 176 pounds. He's basically a 14-year-old, and he is. But he's drafted, and we featured him on this show. Gosh, I mean, what was that? A month and a half, 2 months ago, something like this. I mean,
yeah, it's been a little while.
yeah, and so we talked a lot about Deuce Vaughn, and who knew if he would even get drafted. I mean, this
Right.
was just that he was going to qualify for the draft and all of that. Turns out he did get drafted, and now the world has kind of caught on to what we were talking about a few months ago with Deuce Vaughn. So
funny. Yeah, it's so funny.
cool story.
That happens quite a bit these days.
It sure does. Funny how that works.
Yeah. 3,600 yards rushing in college, 5.5 average, almost 1,300 yards receiving in college. So yeah, dude, very productive. So I don't know what they have planned for him. We thought they were going to draft a running back to replace Ezekiel Elliott, but you would need about 4 Deuce Vaughns to replace Ezekiel. So now there's talks that Zeke may actually come back to the Cowboys. So
Well, there's been no interest in Ezekiel Elliott out there in the market thus far. Nothing.
No, not at all. So
yeah, and then outside of that, a couple interesting things. The 49ers grabbed a kicker in the 3rd round, Michigan's Jake Moody. So he was the highest drafted kicker since the Tampa Bay Bucks took Roberto Aguayo back in 2016. And what a disaster Roberto Aguayo turned out to be. And that was in 2016. No kicker has been drafted that high since. So the Niners took Michigan's Jake Moody, and they clearly believe in him. And then the Patriots traded up the board early in the 4th round to select Chad Ryland from Maryland. So kickers actually, had some value put on them. And then Michigan, just their specialists in general, the Bengals grabbed the punter from Michigan, Brad Robbins. And so all in all, 6 punters and kickers ended up being drafted this year.
amazing.
Yeah. And then the last one that I had, it just is kind of an interesting story. I know you have 1 or 2 as well, but I thought it was really cool. Another guy that we had talked about on this show previously, and just kind of a neat story, I think, is Andrew Voorhees. Ravens drafted him. For people who didn't know about this or see this, I mean, this guy is okay. He was an All-American at USC. He plays on the offensive line. And while working out at the combine, now this guy was considered to be, he would probably be, a 1st, maybe 2nd round pick, something like that. He would have been a high pick. In the NFL combine, working out for teams, he tears his ACL. While they're running and everything, working out for teams, the guy tears his ACL. He goes back in the locker room, gets crutches, comes back out later when players are doing the bench press. Dude has someone hold his crutches, lays down after just having torn his ACL, and bangs out 38 reps on the bench press with a freshly torn ACL, which was the most bench press reps that anyone did in the combine this year, I believe.
Yeah.
And so the Ravens ended up grabbing him in the 6th round. And so this is a guy not unlike a David Ojabo last year, who the Ravens grabbed. He slid into the 2nd. He was a guy last year that would have been considered a top 5, top 10 pick. Slid into the 2nd round because he tore his Achilles at his pro day. And so the Ravens have a tendency to grab these guys late and give value, just put them on a shelf, let them get rested up, and then bring them back. And Voorhees could definitely be a really interesting example of that. But just, I thought it was a cool story. We talked about his story on the show, obviously not knowing if he would get drafted, where he'd get drafted, and all of that. Yeah. But I thought it was really cool that he did at least get drafted, and again, could end up being a heck of a value pick for the Ravens once that guy gets healthy.
Yeah, 100% could be a steal. Yeah, it was such cool. I mean, I couldn't believe you guys picked him up. I was like, man. But no, it was good. I mean, how do you not root for someone like that?
Yeah,
he had no.
I mean, this guy's an All-American.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an All-American at a major college in USC. And yeah, no one would have even batted an eye if the guy's workout ended right there. Nobody was thinking he was going to come back out and do the bench press, because these things are heavily scrutinized. Right? If he had come out and only done 10, people would have been like, "Whoa, well, he shouldn't have never done that. This was a huge mistake," and it would have hurt his draft stock. Instead, the guy's just like, "All right, whatever. I'm just going to do it anyway." And I mean, that just says a lot about his character. We talked earlier about Will Levis and and dealing with that. I think this kind of talks to the character of Andrew Voorhees as well.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. Those are the type of players you want on your team. I don't care. You want that. It's just how do you not like that? How do you not root for that? It's just
that's what it's about.
That's exactly it.
So you had something interesting as well, I believe, about an undrafted free agent. So the draft, when it ends, for anyone who doesn't know, most people do, but when the draft ends, there's a lot of players that didn't get drafted. They still end up on teams. This is where the free agent frenzy starts, because all these what are UDFAs, undrafted free agents, and teams, they may have worked them out ahead of time. They may have been watching them and scouting them. They didn't end up drafting them, but now those players are all free agents. They can choose where they want to go, what team they want to sign with. So there's a lot of people that think you're better off going undrafted. If you're going to be a 6th or 7th round pick, where a team can easily cut you because they didn't invest much in you, you may go to a team that you wouldn't want to play for. You might as well just go undrafted, and then you can pick the team, that you'd want to go to. And oftentimes there ends up being like a bidding war almost, and a frenzy around getting some of these undrafted free agents signed. And we've seen some great players over the years who started their careers as undrafted free agents. So you had kind of a really interesting story about one of them.
Yeah. Former Arizona State running back Xavier Valladay received a $30,000 signing bonus from the Houston Texans, which you say, like, all right, no, that's not bad. But he also got $145,000 paragraph 5 salary guarantee on a 3-year deal worth $2.725 million. Now, this is a large.
How did he not get drafted if he was worth that much?
I see. This is the thing I don't understand either. I don't know. But this is a larger guarantee than 25 players selected in the 6th round and all of the players selected in the 7th round of last year's draft. Yes, This is where if you're not going to go in the first 4 rounds, maybe 5, this is where I think you almost want to be, because you can pick your situation. Now you're kind of bidding your services out to the teams. I'm sure the Houston Texans wasn't the only one interested in Mr. Valladay.
Sure, if they paid him that much, you better believe other people were interested.
So then it becomes, all right, well, should this be maybe how all the draft is? Like, maybe there is no draft. Everyone just goes out here and you just sign, whatever you want to sign these guys to. Yeah, open market. So, I mean, what a deal, man. Everyone should be looking at this dude's agent and saying, yeah, I think I want you to be my agent, No kidding. Cowboys signed something very similar. They signed Hunter Lupke from North Dakota State. They signed him to a $20,000 signing bonus and $180,000 base salary that's also guaranteed. And not a bad way to go, man. I mean, just even if you play 1 year, you've got $180,000 guaranteed for 1 year. I mean,
you can say you played in the NFL.
And say you played in the NFL. So sometimes it just pays to be a UDFA.
Well, I'll tell you, it really does, because I'm going to, touch on just a few here of the best undrafted free agents in NFL history.
Let me guess 1 or 2.
Go right ahead.
All right. I'm going to put Arian Foster up there.
So, man, this actually may not work for guessing, because this is a long list of
Control F.
I'm like, uh-oh, wait a minute. What am I going to do here? Is Arian Foster on this list? And let me tell you something. There are some major names on this list. So I am going to tell you that Arian Foster is not on this list.
I
I don't even see Arian Foster on this list. So that gives you an idea. So I'm going to run through them super quickly here. Undrafted NFL free agents. I have the top 30. Number 30, Wes Welker. Led the NFL in receptions 3 times and had 5 seasons with 100 or more catches. Wes Welker was undrafted free agent out of Texas Tech, signed by the San Diego Chargers, ended up playing 12 years in the NFL, 5 Pro Bowls, 2-time All-Pro. Wes Welker. Then, how about going back a few years for an undrafted free agent, Marion Motley, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Marion Motley is an NFL Hall of Famer. Undrafted free agent out of Nevada, played 9 seasons. Now, again, his first year was 1946. Sure. But he was he played on the great Browns teams of the 40s and 50s, probably just about the last time the Browns were good. And he was the all-time leading rusher in the AAFC and led the NFL in rushing yards in 1950 and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1968. Right after that, another undrafted free agent, Drew Pearson, great wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys out of Tulsa. Again, 11 seasons in the NFL, and he was a member of 3 Cowboys teams that advanced to the Super Bowl. He led the NFL in receiving yards in 1977, and it was undrafted free agent. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of them. I won't go through every one of them. Sure. But some of the big names, I mean, let's see.
Tony Romo, right?
That's
Romo
right.
Was undrafted.
That's right. I mean, Nate Newton, offensive lineman for the Cowboys forever, right? 14 seasons, 6 Pro Bowls, everything else. He was undrafted out of Florida A&M. Jason Peters, offensive tackle for the Eagles, undrafted out of Arkansas. 12 seasons, 8 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pro selections. He's a possible Hall of Famer for sure.
I would put him up there as a very, very good possibility.
Adam Vinatieri as well.
Oh yeah, Vinatieri, you're right.
Priest Holmes.
Priest Holmes was a great one. Antonio Gates, if I'm not mistaken, I think was a undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I believe so. I saw, Antonio Gates out of Kent State.
Yeah, because he was a basketball player. I don't even think he played down of football. What is this crazy?
Yeah, he was a former college basketball player. He played 13 seasons in the NFL, 8-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro. One of the best tight ends in history. Undrafted free agent.
Yeah, I mean, and probably the best one, I guess, probably of all time. Maybe, arguably, he's a Hall of Famer, but Kurt Warner.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, Kurt Warner's like the poster child for the undrafted free agents. You know, I mean,
right.
I mean, they literally have made movies about this dude at this point. Nobody has a crazier story than Kurt Warner. But undrafted. James Harrison of the Steelers, undrafted out of Kent State as well. Weirdly enough, which Kent State knows how to push out those undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of good ones. One day we'll have to just go through the whole list and talk through them, because you have them from all different eras too. I mean, incredible, all the different years. Warren Moon was an undrafted free agent out of Washington, and Warren Moon ended up as an undrafted free agent, plays 17 seasons, 9 Pro Bowls. I mean, come on, man. He's a Pro Football Hall of Famer. He led the league twice in passing yards and had 4 4,000-yard passing seasons, and he was undrafted.
That is insane.
Dick Night Train Lane. I mean, you got all kinds. But here's the thing. A guy like Warren Moon, use this as an example. The draft happened. A draft smaller and less sophisticated than what we have today. Nobody took Warren Moon. And then we see what he did, right? So this idea that That's why I put no stock, and it's why we don't do it on this show. We don't grade the draft picks and the draft. Like it means nothing. It's just what two guys think, and it doesn't matter if those two guys are you and I, or Todd McShay and Mel Kiper, or anyone else. It truly doesn't matter, because the draft happened. However many years ago. I mean, for Kurt Warner, the 1997 draft happened, and Kurt Warner wasn't drafted. And in 1998, he's playing with the St. Louis Rams as an undrafted free agent. And next thing you know, he's in the Hall of Fame. And so, that idea at the draft time, nobody was saying, oh man, the Rams got a steal. They got that undrafted free agent Kurt Warner that's been bagging groceries we've been hearing so much about. Like that's just not a conversation that's being had. So the right players find a way to get to the top. Maybe not all the time, but oftentimes.
Yeah.
If you're there, you're good, you're consistently good. Teams are going to figure you out. I mean, again, we talked James Harrison, right? I mean, he bounced around different. He's Priest Holmes. I mean, there's just, yeah.
Harrison got cut from the Steelers 2 times or 3 times, got cut by the Ravens at least once.
Right.
I mean, yeah. And then just kept grinding. And look what he is now. To me, borderline Hall of Famer. I might be a little biased, but fun fact, Cade Warner is undrafted free agent, just signed with the Buccaneers, Kurt Warner's son. So
all right, nice.
Yeah. So he went undrafted. He's actually a receiver though, not a quarterback. So
okay, all right. Well, good for him. Good for you. Watch out for Cade Warner.
Okay, watch out.
And then also, I'll tell you a name. Go ahead.
No, I just say we got another grocery store movie coming up here. So
that's right. Yeah. Keep your fingers crossed. And maybe there's a guy on this list that people forget now a little bit. I'm gonna reach out to this guy. I want to talk to him. I want to see if I can get him on the show. A guy that people forget now a little bit. How frightening this player was when he played. John Randall.
Oh gosh.
John Randall was an undrafted free agent from Texas A&M Kingsville, signed by the Minnesota Vikings, goes on to play 14 seasons in the NFL, 7 Pro Bowls, 6-time All-Pro, made it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2010, had 137.5 career sacks in 219 games, and he was, separate from being one of the top undrafted players ever, also one of the craziest people ever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, that dude's a machine.
Just those eyes alone, man. He has that face paint.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, he's going to kill someone.
Yeah. And the dude had a motor on him, man. And he just never stopped. And I mean, that's a guy who, like, time, people forget a little bit, John Randall was a monster and an undrafted free agent. So it's not just, you can look at quarterbacks and say, oh, well, okay, maybe Brady's a 6th round pick. Warren Moon's undrafted. Kurt Warner's undrafted. But it can be edge rushers. It can be linebackers. It can be safeties. It can be wide receivers. There's not a single kickers, any one of them. If I'm not mistaken, Justin Tucker was undrafted. So it's not just Adam Vinatieri. So, I mean, you talk about some of the best kickers ever. Undrafted free agents. Yeah. So every position, there's opportunity for these players to still break through. And some of the players that are getting signed right now will end up being big name players for their teams. And it'll be super, super cool to see how it shakes out for a lot of them.
Yeah. I mean, give them an opportunity. Let them see what they can do, and I don't know that there's as much, bias now between a guy picked it in the 3rd round or an undrafted guy. I think teams now, I think they'll give them more of a chance, maybe because they've got some little extra money invested in them, but I don't think teams are quite as afraid as they used to be to go with the best player, not just the guy who got drafted higher. So
yeah, agreed.
Definitely opportunities out there for the undrafted players. So.
That's right. All right. Well, I think, what else? You got anything else to touch on here before we start to wrap this sucker up on our first ever draft recap show?
No, that's it. We'll get ready for mock 2024 here coming up.
That's right. Kuiper's already working on it.
That's exactly it. So we'll see what it is. I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll be Caleb Williams. I'm pretty sure he's already like I don't know, a negative 110 or something to go number one. So, but there's some other quarterbacks that could pop up. You got Marvin Harrison Jr. Coming out, which he'll
people really like him, man.
Really like him. I mean, I think it was SB Nation actually has him right now as the number one prospect, which is crazy. Yeah. Caleb Williams, Drake May, quarterback out of North Carolina. So yeah, there's going to be very interesting to see what teams do this year, and with that extra playoff spot now, teams aren't as quick to kind of not tank their season, because that's illegal. But
we don't do that. No,
we don't do that.
Teams do not tank their seasons.
No, not at all. But with that extra playoff spot now, there's teams are in it way more often. So it's tough to figure out, like, all right, we're kind of middling here, but we're one game out of the seventh seed. So what do we do? It's it's
true.
Yeah. So it should be fun, man. So now we just get these guys into mini camps and OTAs, and
season will be here before we know it.
Season will be here before we know it, man. There's just not a break. There's literally like maybe like a 2.5, 3 week break that you really get from football. And then
just all the players are like just trying to run to Thailand and Mexico and stuff, just to actually have a little bit of time to relax, and then they gotta go right back to it, man.
Yeah. Oh man. Speaking of, did you see Dylan Brooks? They had a picture of him already in Cancun after he lost.
He probably left the locker room, just went right to the airport and got the heck out of Dodge. Dylan Brooks, hopefully people know what we're talking about if they're not watching the NBA playoffs. But man, that dude has been completely humiliated, and everybody's wanting to talk to him. And he talked so much trash, and then just got completely destroyed by LeBron James. Yeah. And they get bounced out of the playoffs by the Lakers. And that dude won't speak to the media, won't do anything after he was talking all kinds of trash to start with. And yeah, he's long gone.
Was so funny.
That dude doesn't even want to talk to people on the beach.
Like, I don't even know how your booking agent can get a trip booked that fast. I mean, it's like 8 hours after they lost, this man showing up in Cancun.
He's like, I'll pay any amount of money. Just I need a ticket. I'm not on Southwest trying to get the want to get away fares. I
do want to get away. I want to get away much faster than these want to get away fares are.
Yeah, crazy. All right, my friend. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So with this, we are officially off the clock. And we will go ahead and wrap this sucker up. And listen, again, appreciate everybody joining us. Appreciate you listening and the support. Happy to have all of us on this ride with us as we continue to grow. And yeah, man, we will be back very soon, better than ever, and have a lot more to talk about. Again, more than the NFL. This is just a draft special. It's not what our normal shows are like. Check out the podcast. We're going to start, putting our things on YouTube as well for people not only to see clips, but to see full episodes. But check us out. We usually cover all kinds of different topics, but we wanted to do a draft special today for everybody. So otherwise, I think we're good to go, my friend.
Yeah, man. Fun episode. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll talk soon. I want to know who does the.
I heard that in there. I'm like, did you do that?
No.